Good day, everyone, and welcome to our Tourism Australia's second update of our new North American focused industry updates series. Thanks for joining us today, and I'm pleased to say that we started on time today. For those of you that joined us a couple of weeks ago, we had some technical issues, so pleased that we got off today without any hitches. So it's great to have everyone join us today. My name is Chris Allison. I'm Head of Commercial Partnerships in Australia, based in Los Angeles. I'm going to act as your host for today's webinar. To start with, I'm just going to talk to you about what we plan to share with you today. There we go. So we've got a couple of focus sessions today. So we're going to hear from Jane shortly, just with a quick update from Tourism Australia in terms of our work here in North America. You guys have also sent us through a bunch of questions in advance, so thank you in advance for those, and Jane's going to address some of those points as part of her introduction. Then we're going to hear from Susan Webb. Sue is President of Vox International. Vox International is a full-service marketing agency based in Toronto, Canada, and they are partners of Tourism Australia, and we wanted to invite Sue on to join us today to have a bit more of a focused discussion on the Canadian market. As we know, many of the businesses and your businesses that are joining us today do operate in both the US and Canada, so we thought it would be useful to have a focused discussion on the state of the market up there in Canada, and Sue is really excited to share some of her insights in terms of what is happening up there at the moment. And then we're going to have a fairly lengthy session. We'll be joined by Ella and Adam from IPG Media Labs. IPG Media Lab is an arm of the IPG Media Group and presented to us about 3 weeks ago to give their insights in terms of the broader impact of COVID on tourism and the tourism industry at the moment. And we felt it was some really good insights there that we wanted them to share with you all in terms of their observations in terms of what's happening at the moment. So we look forward to hearing from them later. And then, of course, at the end, we'll round off with some time for questions and answers to any of the folks that you've heard from today. Just in terms of a couple of bits of housekeeping, so if you do want to answer, if you don't want to ask any questions today, please use the Q&A box on the bottom of your window, and we'll be happy to answer those for you either during the presentation or at the end as appropriate. So without further ado, I'm going to now hand over and introduce to Jane. So Jane, as you all know, is our VP for North America, and she's going to give us a quick update in terms of any developments since we spoke to you guys a couple of weeks ago. So hi, Jane.
Thank you, Chris, and hi everyone, and thanks for joining us again today. We hope that you and your families and teams are all staying safe in these difficult times. I wanted to start off by just acknowledging, as Chris mentioned, we have received a number of advanced questions, mainly around whether there are updates to timelines for Australia reopening its international borders and any restrictions or conditions that might apply. While the Australian Prime Minister has set out a 3-step roadmap for easing restrictions and reopening a COVID-safe Australia, this will be an evolving process, and at this time we don't have any updates on the timeline for reopening international borders or the specific dates on when key decisions on that will be made. However, I did want to, and some of you may have seen on Pip's webinar last week, but for anyone who wasn't able to catch that, I did want to draw your attention to a new resource which will be on australia.com live later today. As you may be aware, with the reopening of businesses in Australia, Australian states and territories have different timelines and conditions for easing restrictions. So we've developed a new map resource on australia.com, which will be a central repository of information to help consumers and industry navigate those developments. So we've worked with state and territory governments and tourism organisations to aggregate the latest information on the status by state and travel advice on as each of the state and territories gradually lift restrictions over coming weeks. So we'd refer anyone who wishes to monitor the domestic conditions within Australia to this resource. And certainly when there are updates to the status of international border restrictions, we will communicate those as well. While noting the map is currently domestic, focused. If you do have any feedback on how we can add to or improve this resource to make it more useful, please do let us know. In the meantime, from a North America perspective, we'll continue to focus on the Dream and Inspire social and virtual content initiatives to our consumer audience and virtual industry training and engagement initiatives that the team outlined on the previous webinar. If you weren't able to catch that, the recording is available on demand, while also scenario planning for how we can best support the restart effort when we do have a timeline for reopening international travel. So to that end, we are continuing to monitor developments across North America, and we're lucky to be joined today by Sue and Alla to share some perspectives and insights. I'll just hand back to Chris to introduce Sue.
That's great. Thanks so much, Jane. So as we said, we're really excited to be joined by Sue Webb today. Sue is president of Vox International. Sue's business is based in Toronto, Vancouver, and Tourism Australia has partnered with Vox for several years now. Vox has been around for 18 years, and Sue has held an illustrious career across the travel industry in Canada. Amongst the many strings to her bow, she is president of Discover America Canada, president of Scale Toronto, and across her career, she has held senior executive management positions at Canadian companies such as the 3000 Holidays, Skylark Holidays, and American Express. And she also holds board positions on many of the Canadian-based industry partners and associations such as the ACTA and the TICO. So we're very excited to have you join us today, Sue. I'm just going to stop sharing so we can see us all. So good to see you, Sue. How are you?
Nice to see everybody. Good day.
Good, thanks, Sue. Hey, so Sue, we thought it might be useful just to maybe just give a quick overview for those that aren't as familiar in terms of what's happening in Canada, just in terms of how COVID is being managed in Canada at the moment and some of the things that are starting to appear in Canada at the moment as things start to relax up there.
Sure, thanks. I mean, as everywhere else in the world, it's been devastating, particularly to our industry in Canada. With a population of 37 million, we've had over 92,000 cases as of today. Ontario and Quebec are the two most affected provinces in Canada and are becoming the slowest to come back and reopen. British Columbia on the West Coast has done a great job in maintaining a healthy province, and they're starting to open up much quicker than we are in Ontario and Quebec. So overall, we've had over 7,000 deaths in Canada, but mainly it has been long-term healthcare facilities, nursing homes, that type of thing that has been the most affected. So the government is really focused on getting people back to work, the economy back to work, and helping companies. So very much has worked with all levels of companies in helping with wage subsidy programs. People that are out of work immediately are getting financial assistance, deferral of tax payments, rents. So the government's really standing behind everyone to try and keep our employees working, which is good news. I guess on the reopening today in British Columbia, children went back to school, so they're eating in restaurants, getting their hair cut. So there is some positive things coming across the country, but we're taking it very slowly because, again, like Australia, we want to be COVID-free and COVID healthy before we really open up the economy. And in that, I'm sure everyone knows that the borders are totally closed between the US and Canada. So there's no travel back and forth. And quite honestly, it's Canada not ready to welcome any tourists in as well. I mean, we're not ready yet. So we're being very careful.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for that. So I guess things, relative to what we're experiencing in parts of the US, things do appear to be a bit more stable up there at the moment, which is great to see. And I think, the government's done a fantastic job in terms of managing the situation. And, as provinces like BC start to relax their restrictions, that's really, really great to see as well. In terms of, given all of that, what, in your experience, in terms of your own business and some of the other brands that you're working with, what what are some of the things that you are starting to see, if anything, in regards to changing consumer behaviours as it relates to appetite towards travel at the moment?
It was interesting. Conference Board of Canada they do monthly updates and surveys on travel intention, outbound Canada. So it's been really interesting to see the changes. In March, it was at the all-time low. Like the consumer confidence and intent to travel was the worst they'd ever seen it. The good news is the May study that was just done is coming up. We have a confidence level now of 63 points, which is really good compared to what it was. So on the Conference Board of Canada's feeling is that at least people are looking at traveling again. First will be domestic, we know that for sure. All indications are that people are going to stay close to home for the next few months. So road trips are going to be an important thing. We just saw today that RV rentals in Canada are almost sold out for the summer, that people are going to explore their own country. And the government has just announced as well $30 million to help domestic tourism that was slated for international tourism marketing will be local. So what we're seeing is definitely stay home, stay safe, be for the next few months. But then there's been really interesting information of people longer term booking and looking for intent to travel. Obviously everything paused. There was nothing happening, no marketing, none of the tour operators or destinations or anyone did any marketing. We paused everything. But then it started coming back with the inspirational, like we're here when we're ready to open back up, trying to keep people sort of top of mind about their destination or their products. Well, that was for about the first month, but we're seeing now a change that the music that was quiet and subdued is now getting a bit more up-tempo, and it's instead of just thinking about coming back to travel, it's when you can travel again. So the messaging has really sort of shifted to you will be able to travel again, it's just when, and starting to welcome people back. We've also seen actual advertising started. Some of the cruise lines are offering bonus commissions to travel agents. There's been advertising on social with actual pricing. So for the first time, we're seeing actual marketing. But some of the destinations and around the world have been very creative. Australia, of course, their Live from Oz were such amazing virtual experiences that we're now going to push out through social media in Canada, which is awesome. But I think people have really been inspired to stay at home, sofa, travel, and now they're, I think, getting itchy. Canadians are so resilient. They were the first people to come back after SARS and to travel internationally. And we really believe that with changes, they will definitely be back to travel as soon as the borders open and we can.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. And I think, you know, we early this morning, we had a catch up with our colleagues at Air Canada, and it was really great to hear from them, their reiteration of the confidence in the Australasia markets and their focus on making sure that they restore their services ex-Vancouver as quickly as demand and the restrictions allow. So I think it's great to see some kind of rising optimism coming out of the Canadian market at the moment, which is fantastic. So obviously we've got a number of partners on the line that do operate in both Canada and the US. Is there anything that you would say in terms of advice to them as this rising optimism begins to happen in Canada, in terms of how they might want to look at the Canadian market any differently to what they might have done in the past, and any advice in terms of how to take advantage of how the Canadian market is evolving a bit differently to the US at the moment in terms of the situation?
I think one of the really positive things that has come out of what's happened in the last few months is that consumers are really seriously considering the use of a travel agent. So there was just a survey done by one of our trade publications to consumers about their intention to travel, but also really interesting was 57% of them said they definitely would be using a travel agent even if they hadn't in the past, because they can handle all of the questions that the consumer has. Canadian consumers, the health and safety was the #1 thing that they want to know. So for anyone dealing with the Canadian travel agents community, they need information on how, from the experience from the airport to the hotels to tours, attractions, restaurants, how is that being handled so that they can be health and safety very much confident. So I think that's one thing. And communication with the travel trade right now is really important. A lot of them are sitting home very bored with not much to do. So they're jumping on these webinars to increase their product knowledge. If you can help them with messaging for their social media to push out to their customers with inspirational information about your products or your destinations, they're desperate for that. Content is really something that they're asking for right now. How do I get positive messages out to my customers through their newsletters and their social? And give them facts. They need the information to answer their customers the right answers. That's what everybody is in right now, trying to get what's the real news, and when we can travel again, that they can be safe. We have a few challenges. Right now, the travel insurance providers in Canada are not allowing for any coverage for COVID illnesses. So there is a big lobbying to try and get that changed, because obviously that will be a deterrent for anyone traveling anywhere in the world. And also the age. We're seeing that on recent surveys, older 55 plus were a bit more concerned because of health and insurance issues, whereas some of the younger age groups, 18 to 44, were a little bit more resilient to get back and travel without worrying about insurance or that type of thing. So I think if you were a tour operator, a destination attraction, reach out to the travel agent, give them training, give them tools of how they can better sell the destinations or the products that you've got. And they're out there desperate right now for communication. They're lonely, some of them at home. So all this great content, push it out to them and keep the conversation going, because they're ready to get back to work.
Yeah, awesome. That's great. Thank you. So just to wrap up, and just to put you on the spot a little bit, and I didn't put this in our little prep, but one of the things that we are starting to be asked about at Tourism Australia is what does it look like for destination in a scenario where the Canadian border opens before the US for particular destinations? I'm just keen to get your perspectives, not specifically for Australia, but just generally in terms of any insights you would have in terms of what that would mean for destinations like ourselves if the Canadian traveller and the Canadian border was open in advance of the US border.
We're already seeing some very positive information about some of the destinations in Europe. For example, Portugal, flights are starting again in July. They're not making travelers from Canada self-quarantine or self-isolate once they arrive there. Greece has opened up flights in July. Germany just today, the Munich airport's open, and slowly we'll have flights out of Canada into Germany. So already there are the ability for people to book in the summer or the fall to destinations that are opening up slowly, and there are bookings being taken. We hear that now. So I think the good news is, and between us right now, keeping that border between Canada and the US closed is really important to Canada, really important to Canada. So we will be traveling places where we feel safe, open spaces like Australia, all the beautiful scenes that we see of lots of open spaces, and being outdoors and in control of your personal environment will be important, rather than big cities, and that's going to be a little bit tougher to get people to go back. So for Canadians, it'll be great. As soon as we're able to travel, as I said, we're ready, and it won't be dependent on the US border opening at all.
Yeah. Awesome, that's great, thank you. Last question, where's the first place you want to visit in Australia when you're able to?
I have very good friends in Burleigh Head that I want to come back to the coast, and friends in Sydney and Uluru, everywhere. I just want to be back. I want to travel again. This is the first time I haven't been on a plane for months. It's terrible.
Right. Yeah, awesome. So, well, thank you so much. We didn't get any questions coming through, but you will be joining us at the end if anyone has thought of any questions. So For our folks listening, if you have thought of any questions for Sue, please pop them in the Q&A box, and we'll come back to those at the end. But in the meantime, Sue, thank you so much for joining us. Those are some great insights. Thank you. That's perfect. Well, thanks again, Sue. So we're now going to move on and hear from our colleagues at IPG Media Labs. I'm just going to get my presentation back up on the screen. So we're really pleased to be joined by Ella Barnett and Adam Simon. These guys are colleagues of ours from IPG Media Labs, and as I said at the beginning, they shared a really insightful presentation with us a couple of weeks ago, talking about their observations in terms of the impact of COVID on the tourism industry. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Ella, who is going to take us through the update. So welcome, Ella.
Thanks so much, Chris.
You should have control now, Ella.
Awesome. Sorry. Perfect. Okay. So thanks everyone for joining us today. What we've done and what we do in IPG is really look at how things are being disrupted and how different industries are being disrupted. So in the time of COVID-19, we've obviously been looking at how COVID is really disrupting different industries. And one of the industries is travel and tourism. But before I take you through travel and tourism specific trends that we're seeing, I want to take you through just a couple of macro trends that we're seeing across all industries that we really think are going to affect, definitely affecting consumer behavior now, and will continue to do so as we move out of this period and into the next normal. So first off, what we're really seeing COVID do is act as this trend accelerator. It's really pushing, traditional businesses into this digital age, whether they kind of want to be there or not. So whether that be through like an increase in online auto sales and test drives. So we're seeing a huge increase where you buy online and they literally deliver the car to your door. And more people than ever are purchasing groceries through an app. Or even if we look at the quick rise of telemedicine due to the consumer's need to contact doctors without going outside, and telemedicine's ability to facilitate that. And what we're really seeing is consumers are very quickly accepting and adapting to this more digital lifestyle. And we fully expect that once consumers get used to accessing these services digitally, often more conveniently, these industries may actually find it very hard to go back to traditional operations, as there will always be an expectation of some sort of digital element from the consumer. And as we continue to shelter at home, we're seeing the at-home economy rise, and consumers and businesses really adapt to this. So one of the main ways this is happening is we're seeing these new breeds of expertise-driven influencers. So chefs, teachers, barbers, really leveraging this new kind of live video as a service to promote their products and skills that were once physical and now have to be only communicated through a digital way. And then, of course, we've got the cloud raves and virtual parties that have become the newest way to mingle at home. Cover fee, of course, still included. And if nothing else, we know the at-home economy is really on the rise when tops are outselling pants, which is what Walmart has been reporting since COVID has started, because after all, who is really wearing pants at home? And one thing that is also becoming increasingly apparent is with all this extra time at home, consumers are really paying attention to how brands are responding to this crisis. So what a company does or doesn't do during this time will actually be remembered by consumers in the future and will affect their ongoing purchasing decisions. So an Elderman study actually already has shown that 37% of Americans have actually started using a new brand due to the innovative or compassionate way that they have responded to this pandemic. So consumers are really wanting brands to at least acknowledge the issue and then ideally be part of that solution going forward. So onto more travel and tourism specific trends that we're seeing. So travel and tourism were obviously among the first industries actually affected by COVID. And then with the primary business model really depending on people not minding being in close contact with each other, COVID has definitely changed that, both in terms of behavior and through literal regulations. So we can see that COVID is still having this huge impact on travel. This survey from the beginning of May actually indicates that US consumers are still very hesitant to travel, with most opting not to travel at all. So 82% of consumers have changed their travel plans. And we're really seeing an indication here of the types of shifts travel can expect, mainly towards cars and domestic preferences. We've got predictions from like McCabe World Travel of there being at least a year, if not two, until airline and general travel levels are renormalized and reestablished. And we can really expect to see an entirely new normal in the years to come. So already we're actually seeing the effects of lesser travel on the airline industry. Smaller airlines around the globe have completely halted business or have gone out of business altogether. So British airline Flight went out of business in early March. US Airlines, Compass Airlines, and American Eagle Airlines have actually been grounded since April 1st, the first week of April. And that has actually significantly reduced the ability to travel to and from these regional areas where these smaller airlines primarily serviced. And it's also worth mentioning that, you know, with most airlines needing at least about an 80% capacity rate to actually break even, currently the average US flight is currently getting really only about 23 passengers per plane. And airlines are really dealing with this crisis through additional cleaning, vastly increased booking flexibility that really allow for refunds and travel vouchers that range between 6 months to 2 years, depending on the airline. And most airlines, you know, are reducing the snack and beverage options in that effort to reduce person-to-person contact through services. And we're also seeing the majority of airlines have actually gone as far as to make that middle seat all but unbookable. So, you know, pretty much removing it from the space to, you know, provide more space to consumers. But there is the more controversial news that like Frontier actually tried to charge extra for people to sit next to those empty middle seats, and that they had to backtrack that very quickly as there was severe pushback from consumers calling them out from trying to profit off of fear. Similarly, we're seeing, you know, hotels really trying to get people to book future travel again, again, increasing that flexibility by waiving cancellation or change fees up to 24 hours, sometimes even 12 hours before check-in, and being really as accommodating as possible with travel arrangements. But one thing that is definitely happening is that hotels aren't looking to book rooms for right now. They're definitely trying to incentivize these future travel possibilities and options. So some mainly boutique hotels have actually united to launch a buy one, give one, which is a kind of vacay layaway program initiative with the idea to incentivize consumers to really purchase future travel now with specialty offers. So, you know, ranging from discounted stays, gift cards, additional loyalty points for redemption. And these can actually, some of these can actually be redeemable prior to the travel themselves. So they've still got that benefit of booking now for a later date. And then on top of that, they will be donating whatever a consumer books, and they will donate it to a first responder frontline worker. So whether that's like the American Nurses Association or the New York Presbyterian or any other of these like essential worker and medical workers, so they can also achieve, you know, these future leisure stays and everyone can have a holiday. And so partners of this initiative, they generally do include, like I said, more boutique hotels, but they also have like the Hilton Clearwater Beach Resort and Spa as part of it, the Library Collection Hotels, and also the Athenia Hotels and Suites. And one thing that we're seeing across the board is really this increase in flexibility. So, you know, which is a trend that we actually expect to stay for a while as consumers really begin to get used to this new flexibility and customability and expect to see it moving forward. So it's going to really become an expectation. But one thing that, you know, is especially apparent that shows that this is happening, although it is likely to be short term, is both airlines and hotels have actually paused their loyalty points and miles, allowing them not to expire. So, and then in one instance, we've also seen Thai Air International actually award their premium members with miles to stay at home. So therefore incentivizing them, increasing their brand loyalty to travel once this lockdown is complete. And then in recent weeks in North America, we've seen many companies, so including Marriott, United Airlines, American Airlines, Hilton, they've actually all made it easier to qualify for elite or higher status memberships by, again, like booking future travel now. And as countries and states really gradually open up, airlines and hotels will need to really entice consumers to fly. So we can expect an abundance of deals geared towards frequent flyers and hotel reward points, which will, you know, likely include seats for less mileages and easier upgrades. And this will make sense because there will be more room and options for maneuverability as airlines get back on their feet. So because of this huge decline in travel and tourism, brands are really having to pivot to stay relevant and increase consumer trust. So consumers are unlikely to travel again until things are considered safe, or more importantly, till they consider things to be safe and they feel that their safety is accounted for. So the travel and tourism industry is really trying to show that they are on top of everything by developing some key adaptation techniques. So we're seeing a lot of new technology enter the space. Eddy is actually trialing a new check-in kiosk in Abu Dhabi, and that's actually able to identify travelers with medical conditions. So according to Eddy, the kiosk can monitor a passenger's temperature, their heart rate, and their respiratory rate. And this technology can work not just at check-in kiosks, but also baggage drops, immigration counters, security checkpoints. And then if a sickness or fever actually is detected, airline officials will be alerted to make a human assessment. But this also really raises the question of, will checking for illness continue beyond the COVID outbreak? So like 9/11 changed a lot of airport rules. Will having a clean bill of health become a new norm for everyday air travel? And as the talk of immunity passports continues, and there is an additional expectation of additional spikes in outbreaks, it's certainly a possibility, and it definitely becomes increasingly likely with the more investment that we see put into illness detection. Having said that, it is too soon to tell at this moment. But it is looking like it will be around at least for the midterm. So likewise, we're also seeing an increase in automation in airports and airplanes, mainly to ensure social distancing measures, which some Harvard studies have actually suggested may be in place until 2022. So over the next 12 to 36 months, AI and biometrics have been identified as having a really crucial role to play in the aviation industry. And in South Korea, they've actually already installed a smart airport team, and that's actually looking into how big data, AI, automation can really help make airports more efficient, as well as aiming to reduce human contact. So they're planning on doing this through robotics technology, automated vehicles, biometrics, and also, self-service check-in and bag drop implementations. And these things are actually all already on the agenda to be implemented over the next few years. We're also seeing a higher standard of cleanliness be expected. So United has announced a move to partner with the cleaning brand Clorox to create the United Clean Plus, which is an initiative really designed to, bring Clorox products to airplanes and airport areas and make them more accessible to travelers in a way to showcase that United has also created a graded cleaning procedure and safety guidelines. And this is in addition to installing contactless kiosks and sneeze guards at check-in counters and airport lobbies, and allowing fewer passengers to board at a time. And in a similar vein of increasing consumer assurance, Eddy has actually also created the Eddy Wellness Ambassadors, who are actually accessible 24/7 to provide flyers with a guide to all wellness and safety measures implemented in the airports and planes that they will be flying on. But airlines will also really need to adapt their cabins in order to tempt consumers back and reassure them that their health is protected whilst on board in a physical manner that goes beyond the filtration systems currently in use. So while airlines have promised that they are stopping selling the middle seat, Factory Design, which is the London aviation consultancy, has actually gone that step further and developed a solution to really try and make consumers feel safer, and then to also incentivize air travel. So their Isolate kit pretty much transforms the middle seat or any seat as it can be installed wherever into a screen, to provide maximum personal space and separation between passengers. And reduced passenger loads will really free up opportunities to adapt and experiment with existing cabins to address this new normal in the short and medium term. Meanwhile, it's also worth noting that some brands are actually not just adapting, but pivoting their offering slightly. So AirAsia has begun resuming several domestic routes, but their health and hygiene regulations have made it necessary for in-flight food and beverage services to be temporarily suspended. And in response to the high demand from passengers who actually miss those services, that in-flight food and beverage, they've actually pivoted their offering so that that is now available to be made for on-land deliveries. So essentially for dinner, you could order the AirAsia bubble tea and a corresponding meal that goes with it. And Marriott is also releasing a similar initiative, so Marriott on Wheels in India, and that will actually allow Marriott's food to be available in several Indian cities, including Delhi and Mumbai, facilitated through about 20 Marriott hotels, with the expectation that it will expand as more hotels join into the initiative. So what it's really doing is leveraging the Marriott brand reputation to drive possible sales in a non-hotel setting. And so it offers Marriott food through delivery, as well as mobile trucks. But as we look at hotels, what we're really seeing is an almost mirror image of adaptation to airlines, with many looking at changes that will last into the longer term as they realize that consumers' wants and expectations will have changed moving forward. So we expect to see automation actually accelerate in hospitality as hotels really look to re-strategize and implement these fresh solutions as social distancing becomes a norm. Even as lockdowns are eased. So this can be done through automated hotel check-ins and robot amenity deliveries, contactless payments, and also, robot directors as well. And these will come as hygiene concerns really fuel that demand for touchless technology that we're seeing across industries. So Marriott actually has plans to offer contact-free room service and check-in through its cell phone app. And in Hong Kong, the Le Hotel Group has actually recently added a trio of artificial robots to their staff to provide amenities to guests. And what people are expecting will happen, at least in the short term, is that the immediate future of hotels will be faceless and encouraging that social distance. So there'll be no personal touches when you're in and being welcomed. But it is worth noting that leaders don't actually think that these changes will necessarily decrease staff, but rather repurpose them to provide a more personalized services where needed, but isn't necessarily just at the welcome desk. So to make people's stay more enjoyable and more personalized in other ways. And we also expect to really see that cleanliness and disinfection will be heightened even more so in hotels and in airlines due to the length of stay that people are there for. And it's actually likely to become an advertised amenity for hotels, as people will consider the cleanliness of a hotel when checking in and when researching what hotels that they want to stay at. So Hilton is really getting ahead of this trend by aiming to deliver a new industry-defining standard of cleanliness and disinfection. So the end product really being, it's actually going to be launched in North America in June, so this month, and it's called Hilton Clean Stay with Lysol. And what they've done is collaborate with RB, which is the maker of Lysol and Dettol, and also consult with the Mayo Clinic to develop an elevated process of cleaning and sanitation, and then also providing, team member training to ensure the cleaning proficiency standard is set across all Hilton hotels. And then furthermore, they're actually going to put seals on all the doors, indicating that they haven't been entered since they were last cleaned. And this is just one of many emerging additional cleaning experiences that travel and tourism brands seem to be creating. So we're also seeing the Marriott create a new global cleanliness council. Airbnb is debuting a new cleaning guidelines for hosts, which include not having anyone stay within 24 hours. So there'll be a 24-hour break period between people checking in. And they've actually also been developed in conjunction with the Centers for Disease Control and former Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murthy. But moving on from travel and into more tourism sorted, as the boredom rates are really soaring through America, we're seeing armchair escapism or armchair tourism really rise as brands are engaging audiences with culture, travel and tourism in new ways, having to pivot from those in-person experiences into digital formats. So 80% of Americans have actually reported that, they're already planning, thinking, dreaming about traveling again. And 42% of them actively want to see advertising for travel and tourism. So brands do just need to be a little bit careful on how they advertise and promote, making sure that they're addressing and accommodating for any COVID sensitivities that may arise. And the small sliver of good news is that, consumers are really engaging with brands at higher levels than previously, which actually provides brands the opportunity to tap into a consumer audience bored at home, really desperately wanting what they have to offer. So tourism has this unique ability because people look at it both as a means of escape and also as this kind of light at the end of the tunnel. I hope that one day this lockdown will end because it's going to be over when you can travel internationally again, when you can travel as you want. So for this, we're really seeing a huge spike in virtual museums and art galleries. So a while ago, Google Arts and Culture actually teamed up with over 2,500 museums and galleries around the world to bring anyone and everyone virtual tours and online exhibits of some of the most famous museums around the world. So there's everything from the Met to the MoMA to Amsterdam Van Gogh Museum, British Museum in London. And some of these have actually also developed their own standalone apps or have added virtual tours by documenting recent additions, talking to their curators, showing behind the scenes live videos or recorded videos. And these have all been met to great satisfaction with audiences as well, and high engagement rates. We're seeing Vieta, so TripAdvisor's experience booking tool. And what they're actually doing is combining some of these virtual tours and also creating, working with key tourism established to create their own more bespoke tours to create their Roam from Home campaign. And what this really does is supplies like virtual tours that can take anyone from anywhere all over the world. It's all in one place and it's able to be sorted by interest. So whether that is dining or sightseeing or culture. And they include guided tours of famous sites. You can do a guided city walk, a cooking class. They have videos, whether that is VR or 360 or just normal ones. And it's also a mix of free and paid possibilities. So there is something for everyone. But interestingly enough, what they've also done is that they've essentially promised not to take any cut. So when a tour or a experience has to be paid for, 100% of that will be going towards the operator that has created it. And considering that 80% of these operators are actually small businesses, what Vieta is doing is really offering consumers the chance to support these small businesses and giving them agency to do so, which is extremely smart, as another trend that we're seeing across the board is the want by consumers to really step up and support small businesses where and when possible. So, by providing them that opportunity, they're elevating this Roam from Home experience to also make people feel really good about themselves and feel like that they're helping as well as actually being entertained. So live video is also seeing a huge surge across the board, with many industries actually using its ability to connect to audiences in real time to promote themselves in ways that actually encourage interaction and live feedback. National tourism boards are really hopping onto these virtual experiences. So they're creating a lot of new types of campaigns to provide that kind of taste of culture that really keeps audiences engaged with their country, with the intent, to make audiences like itch to experience it for real once this is all over. So from Jamaica to St. Lucia to Colombia, even the US Virgin Islands Depot of Tourism actually managed to celebrate Carnival virtually this year. So they brought together thousands of people through their home walk experiences. So they were home walk was a live digital experience, and they encouraged everyone to dance, to dress up, and really bring the Carnival celebration directly into people's homes, engaging them and keeping that festival alive for future prospects. The tiny Faroe Islands as well have actually created, so they've kind of taken live video and gone a step beyond it. So they've created this whole new element to armchair travel through a gamified live tour. So what you can do is really tour the Faroe Islands and direct the on-screen guide with buttons, whether that's to go left, right, up, down. You can make the guide run, you can make the guide jump. But the idea is that this isn't a computer game, but it is a live video, and it's all being done by a camera, which is being worn by a real person, so by this tour guide, who is able to respond to commands from anonymous people anywhere in the world. And what this again is doing is providing this much more personalized experience that consumers can actually, have some element of control over at home, so they can see the islands more in the way that they want to experience them. And we're also seeing hotels walk this very interesting line between the online and the offline. So Home Sweet Home in Amsterdam has actually shifted the idea of what a hotel can be, kind of separating the experience of the hotel from the physical location. So what they're doing is really partnering with local entrepreneurs, restaurants, and artists to create and take staycations to that next level. So consumers will get a virtual check-in. They'll then receive a curated, locally sourced welcome box supporting those local partners. they'll be able to access exclusive live online entertainment, and even a concierge will be made available to them during their stay. And it's all sorted, all delivered to your home, and an entirely kind of like digital experience where, yeah, you've got the hotel experience, but you remain at home. So you have all the safety that you want, but with all the perks of staying at a hotel. And what we really expect these digital pivots will do, will change how we think about culture. So the digital wanderlust and on-demand access to global culture and curated experiences are really likely to stay as consumers accept and actually anticipate this type of digital immersion, either as part of travel research or as a substitute for the real world experience. And as we have a potentially increasing likelihood of recession, this could be a very interesting opportunity to still allow people to travel throughout that. And so, you know, we're seeing VR headsets rise and digital culture accelerate. It's like across industries and just in general. So this could actually really further and create these amazing opportunities and new possibilities for the tourism industry that haven't been explored currently. And for our final section, you know, just looking at how travel preferences are really shifting. So in North America, so as we're, you know, beginning to ease up on restrictions and starting our way into that new next normal, there are several things that we can generally expect to see consumers do to shift their travel preferences and habits. So currently, the future of travel and tourism after COVID is predicted to go one of two ways. And depending on how much longer this goes on for, and also looking at different populations and different demographics, we expect to see both happen. So first is that people are likely to be very cautious of crowded places for a while. And this will result in house rentals, private cabanas and resorts, private tours. And this will really increase in popularity. But this will definitely come after a travel and tourism lag, as the people kind of look at people that do venture out and make an analysis on that. Like, they're very cautious, going to be very cautious moving forward. The second option is the people that will want to escape isolation and their home immediately. And this will result in very little lag, but has the potential to have higher levels of problems. So the results of any spikes, which are forecast that may come from this, will probably also affect the way this goes. So if we're all put into a secondary lockdown, people are going to emerge much, much more cautious than they did originally. And then when the US does reopen and people really start to move around again, we can expect to see this acceleration for local tourism, not just domestic tourism, but like within 100 miles from home. So people really sticking close to home as things remain uncertain, or opting for close by retreats as well. So reports are already showing that camping gear purchases are increasing, with predictions that national parks will see a huge rise in visitation. Road trips will be definitely the preferred way of travel where possible, over flights and crowded trains. RVs are seeing a spike in sale as consumers really indicate they want to take their own private spaces with them when they travel, because that is what they trust. And already Virtuso, which is a network of luxury travel agencies, that actually originally predicted that Hawaii, Italy, Orlando, Costa Rica, and England would be Americans' 2020 top family destinations. But now they've actually pivoted that to more domestic options that can be reached by car, including a lot of national parks and smaller cities that haven't been hit as hard, like Charleston in South Carolina. So it's also worth noting that for places, both countries and cities like New York, like Italy, like America, that were really hit hard and actually considered an epicenter, the repercussions for travel and tourism will likely last longer as people actively avoid traveling in those areas. And it's also predicted that, you know, after being cooped up for months on end, tourgoers will really be gravitating towards more wellness experiences, especially if we look towards 2021. So like the idea behind this is, you know, if 2020 proves to be this time that we spend a lot of time indoors, 2021 will be about getting outdoors and getting active, with tours centered around things like cycling, trekking, and mindfulness. And we can already see this in the significant rise of bicycles that has been happening since the lockdown has started to ease. And this is also likely to go for both domestic and international travel plans once the international travel really starts to ramp up again. So finally, a huge shift of consumer preference will also be through business trips. So at the Skift Summit, polls of about 1,000 business professionals actually revealed that they anticipate only 23% of businesses to consider 2021 travel, especially as they continue to pivot towards more virtual meetings. And furthermore, the Skift's CEO actually stated that he doesn't expect business travel to reach pre-COVID levels ever again. So we've experienced that golden age. And this will be influenced still further by the possible success of the virtual and digital conferences. So some brands might, start opting out of conferences and exhibitions, instead opting to stay digital, which would then also reduce the travel and hospitality industry permanently in the years ahead. So overall, with the uncertainty of the pandemic, plus the sudden shift in behavior, we're all changing habits very fast and expectations, and some things are definitely going to stick. So in summary, brands, should be looking to engage digital and on-demand options to really bring experiences to life in new ways and to increase connections with consumers, especially as this at-home economy continues to rise. We'll expect a lean into domestic tourism as COVID-19 restrictions lessen, and realize that consumers may be much more hesitant about flying and being around people. So upgrades for fast passes and streamlined travel options to skip any lines may increase, as will the expectation for more flexible travel options. Likely to go hand in hand with that, they'll probably be happy to pay more for those options as well. Automation will accelerate in the airline and hospitality sectors due to consumers needing to adhere to social distancing protocols and also feeling safer without that forced interaction with other humans. And finally, it is likely that international travel will surge after restrictions are lifted, as consumers really want to go on those once in a lifetime travels that they've been spending this entire time in quarantine planning. So brands really should be ready to meet that demand when it does finally happen. Thank you very much. Chris, I'll pass it back to you.
That's great. Thank you so much, Ella. What a fantastic update. It's great to hear those insights from you guys. So that's been really awesome. So we've probably got a little bit of time for some questions. I'm just looking to see if we have any questions that have come through. I don't think we've got any questions, but I might just ask Sue to come back and Jane to come back. I've probably just got a couple of my own observations if you guys want to put your cameras back on. Hi, Sue. I think Jane will be joining us in a second. And then, Ella, are you still there as well?
Yes, of course.
Awesome, perfect. Well, thanks again. So I think, some of those insights that you were sharing, I think, present some really interesting opportunities for Australia. So I think as we look at how Australia is handling the situation, I think there's a growing perception of Australia being a safe destination. And I think it's, I think, Jane, we're starting to measure some of that sentiment in terms of perception of Australia being a safe destination, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think through this process, I think last webinar, some of you would have seen Rob Dugan talk about, the framework that we are using to assess, basically track consumer sentiment and assess the opportunity to restart across all of our international markets. So we'll certainly look at that research and the various kind of data sources and expertise that we're tapping into to sort of inform that approach. But we really would expect that Australia will benefit from some of the things that the shifts in terms of what people are looking for. And I think your point, Ella, is a really good one, that we probably do expect that iconic destinations that are top of people's bucket lists will have a lot of pent-up demand coming out of this crisis. So we're just wanting to make sure that we are keeping Australia top of mind for people to take advantage of that when it happens.
Yeah, and I think that's another good point you raised, Jane, just in terms of, a lot of the research is clearly pointing to the fact that people will return to travel domestically first of all, and international long-haul travel will be a bit further down the way. But I guess a lot of the work that we're doing at the moment is trying to maintain that relevance despite that, so that when people do feel comfortable, we hope to be able to have a bit of a head start, correct?
Exactly. And I think, you know, certainly in terms of the relative safety, but also kind of the key pillars that we continue to emphasize through this Dream and Inspire content. So the nature and wildlife, which we expect there'll be a really strong appetite to, you know, explore, reconnect with nature and wildlife. The great food and wine, the aquatic and coastal attractions, you know, the Indigenous and modern culture, you know, the pillars that we really emphasize. We expect there'll be a lot of pent-up demand for those attributes.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's great. Well, thanks again, Sue, for joining us today. I know it's getting later in the afternoon for you, so we really appreciate that. And Ella, also for you're in New York, so we appreciate you jumping on and providing that great insight for us. We'll just quickly wrap up now. So just to talk very quickly about our next webinar. So our next session is going to be in 2 weeks' time. So that will be on Tuesday, June 16th. This session was actually going to be focused on 2 areas. So our next session, we're going to have a bit of a deep dive into aviation. So we know that obviously aviation capacity is going to be really key to how we recover internationally as a destination. So we're going to be talking to a couple of our colleagues from our Sydney office to share some of the work that we're doing and our thinking around how Tourism Australia will be focused on supporting our airline partners in restoring their services as soon as timing allows. And then connected with that, we're also going to have Stephen Thompson from Qantas. Stephen will be known to many of you. He's the EVP for Qantas in the Americas region. He's going to join us and come and talk to us about the latest developments at Qantas in terms of how they're planning to evolve their customer experience based on the travel restrictions that are in place in Australia. And also we hope by that point he'll be able to share a bit more about how they're looking to restart their business from a domestic Australia point of view as the restrictions start to relax in Australia. And then we'll also be joined, as part of this series, we felt it was also important to bring in our state and territory partners to provide a more detailed update in terms of the things that they're focused on within their particular area within Australia. So for this next webinar, we'll be joined by colleagues from Destination New South Wales, from their Sydney office, who will be giving us a bit of a detailed update in terms of what's happening from a New South Wales perspective. So we look forward to that as well. As a quick reminder, when you guys sign off from the webinar today, you'll be asked to complete a survey. It'll just take literally a quick minute to fill in, so we'd appreciate any feedback or insights that you do have from the webinar today. And then you'll be receiving a follow-up email which will contain a link to register for the next webinar on the 16th of June. But as always, if you guys do have any questions, please reach out to Jane, me, or any of our colleagues at Tourism Australia, and we'll be happy to answer those for you. But in the meantime, we wish you a very pleasant rest of the day, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks so much, everyone.